Okay, well, thank you for coming out today. And like Martin said, my name is David Clabo, and I'm a graduate student at the University of Tennessee. Today I'm going to be presenting the results of my thesis study, which was titled Shortleaf Pine Sprout Production Capability in Response to Disturbance. And this is my shortleaf pine story, as we were talking about earlier. I spent a couple of years working on this project, so I'll get into an introduction here. Shortleaf pine sprouting is an induced response to stem injury or death, and the sprouts come from dormant buds that are located just above a physiological adaptation known as the basal crook. And most of the buds are actually located at the root collar, right above the basal crook. But the basal crook lowers these buds in the soil surface, and the soil acts as an insulation to help protect the buds from damaging temperatures during a burn. And then sprouting in shortleaf pine is reported in stems up to 6 to 8 inches in diameter or 30 years old. So the ability of shortleaf pine to sprout decreases with age, like hardwoods. Also, sprouting allows shortleaf pine to tolerate frequent disturbances. So species such as loblolly pine or Virginia pine that can't sprout will often decline in areas where burning occurs frequently. Also, when shortleaf pine becomes a mature tree, it has characteristics that make it suitable for areas with frequent disturbances. It has thick insulating bark, it has low amounts of flammable resins like terpenes, it's drought resistant, and it has great longevity. Trees regularly live to be 170 years old or older. I think the oldest tree ever found was 400 years old. And then depending on vegetative reproduction and seed reproduction, combined may be better than seed alone for shortleaf pine. So burning, if you have a natural seed source, burning to promote seedling germination by scarifying the ground, along with using fire to reduce competition impacts on shortleaf pine together may be the best way to try to get proper densities for shortleaf pine regeneration. But that's assuming you have a natural seed source. So justification for my study, past research on burning and clipping for shortleaf pine has been limited to the western portion of its range. So this is Arkansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma, in the interior highlands region, those 3 states. But there's been little research done on the Cumberland Plateau and the Piedmont area in the eastern portions of shortleaf pine's range, like any research at all, let alone on effects on burning and clipping on sprouting. So there's little known on the timing of disturbance and seedling age effects on sprouting, so that's one of the main things my study was designed to investigate. And then knowledge of sprouting could improve management of shortleaf pine seedlings already on the ground and factor into burn prescriptions. So knowing when is the best season to burn to promote regeneration or improve survival of shortleaf pine is important. So now I'll go into the study site where my study was located. Study site was the University of Tennessee Cumberland Forest South Unit, and this is located in Morgan County, Tennessee. So this was at the base of Little Brushy Mountains, so right here next to the forest headquarters. So you can see it's not too far away from Coalfield and Harriman and whatnot. The study site itself was a previously maintained field, so when I say previously maintained, it was mowed regularly. The soils there are pretty good. It's lonewood silt loams. The mean annual precipitation in this area is about 56 inches annually, and the site index for shortleaf pine is 70 feet, so it's a fairly productive site. Briefly go over the methods of my study. 2,250 1-0 stock seedlings were planted on February 25th, 2011, and these were seedlings obtained from the Tennessee State Nursery down near Delano. And the seedlings were planted in groups of 50 seedlings, and they were randomly assigned to treatment. So seedlings were planted on a 1 by 1 foot spacing in a 4 by 9 foot plot. So these are small plots. And then a treatment was randomly assigned to the seedlings. So the treatments were a March clip, a March or April burn, a July burn, a November burn, and then a control. And then each treatment was applied to 1 and 2 and 3-year-old seedlings from 2011 to 2013, and each plot only received a treatment once. So now I'll briefly go over my burn methods. Herbicide and clipping of grass and herbaceous plants was used to control them prior to burns, and we did this so we'd have bare mineral soil in the plots, and we could apply white pine needles that we gathered from nearby stands to provide a consistent fuel, so burns would be more likely to be as equal as possible. And we used about, on average, 10 pounds of needles per plot. And then each plot was lit in a ring ignition pattern. And then during the burn, temperature and duration were recorded at 15-second intervals until a complete flame out, and that was that picture Martin showed just a few moments ago. And then the clip methods, seedlings were clipped at less than 1.5 inch above ground, and then any sprouts that were present before the clip were also clipped, including the main stem of the seedling. So here's the study site schematic. So you can see the 3 colors represent the 3 blocks of the study, and we blocked due to shade and moisture differences across the field. But each plot, there's 15 in each block, sorry about that. But each plot has a unique combination of a treatment and year for each one of those, so there's 15 total. Measurements, we assessed survival, so if a seedling had any green foliage on it, it was counted as alive. Measured the tallest sprout height, and then seedlings that were not top killed and did not necessarily produce sprouts, we measured that seedling itself. And the number of sprouts was counted, and then 2011 treatments were measured in winter of 2012, 2013, and then again the following year. And then all other treatments, excluding the November 2013 burn, were measured in the winter of 2013, 2014. And that November treatment was excluded because the time frame between when the treatment was done and when measurements were taken was so short that seedlings wouldn't have had time to sprout because in the dormant season there. So here's the results for survival. A couple of things I want to go over first are that these orange lines around a box indicate an individual analysis. So within the box, any 2 treatments that have the same letter in parentheses are statistically the same. I'm sorry if you're not a stats person, but gotta go over that a little bit. But as you can see, among the 3 burn treatments in all the years, only 2 in 2013, there are really no differences in survival. So the season really didn't have much of an impact on survival, season of burn. And then typically the clip produced better survival than any of the burn treatments except for down here in the 3rd year. And then the controls, we had about 75% survival in the 1st year and 82 and 76, so survival is pretty consistent across the blocks for the controls. And then from the 1st year after the burns or treatments in the 2011 treatment year, survival dropped off very little from the 1st to the 2nd year. So results for sprout production, again the same guidelines apply on the boxes here. And also for these analyses we tested covariates, and there were 6 of these covariates. So we had mean burn temperature, maximum burn temperature, burn duration, median burn temperature, the standard deviation of burn temperature, and the summation of all burn temperatures. So there were 6 of them. But for the 2011 treatment year, maximum burn temperature proved to be significant, and really all a covariate tells us is what the means would have been if the maximum burn temperature had been equal across all the plots. So when a covariate is significant, that means there was a lot of variability in that individual treatment in the maximum burn temperature. So if you look here, the trend tends to be that in November and July, the first 2 years, that about the same they produced the most sprouts on average compared to the March clip and burn. And then in 2013, the mean burn temperature covariate was significant. You can see what that did to the results. And that year we saw a different trend where March clipping and burning produced the most sprouts on average. And then another important thing I wanted to point out in the 2011 treatment year was that the mean number of sprouts dropped off significantly from the first to the second year. So the shortleaf pine seedlings were beginning to allocate their resources to fewer stems. So results for sprout height. First year there was really no differences in sprout height among the 3 burn treatments. Clipping tended to produce taller sprouts on average. And then for the 2012, treatments, the mean burn temperature covariate was significant again on that analysis. And notice what it did to the July burn in that year. Very little height growth following the burn. And then another thing I wanted to point out with the November burns of that year was that we started to see where the seedlings weren't being top killed by the burn, and this tended to be the trend for the rest of the burn treatments done throughout the rest of the study in 2013. But again, seedlings averaged about 20 inches in height growth per year across all the treatments, so fairly good growth rates. So conclusions. Clipping had greater survival, more sprouts, and taller sprouts in 1- and 2-year-old seedlings, whereas the opposite tended to be true in 3-year-old seedlings. And seedlings were large enough by the November 2012 burn to not be top killed consistently. So we were seeing about, I think it was between 40 and 50% of the seedlings weren't being top killed by that time. And then the season of burn was not significant in its effects on survival rate, sprout number, and height growth across the 3 ages. And then variation in burn characteristics and weather may have the most impact on survival and growth response. So, for example, in the July burns, especially the first 2 years, when ambient temperatures were higher and relative humidity was lower, we tended to see worse survival and height growth following the burn, but greater sprout production. Whereas if humidity was higher during a burn in that time of the year, we tended to see better survival and height growth, but fewer sprouts produced following a burn. So management implications. Burns can be conducted at any time during the growing season for competing species control. The differences in impacts on shortleaf pine seedlings survival and growth are going to be negligible, so there's not going to be much of a difference on when you burn. Managers should stop burning until the majority of seedlings are at least 3 years old in this region if they do not want top kills. So say if you want your seedlings to grow large enough to survive a burn so they can reach the overstory over time, then you need to stop burning for at least 3 years. I would recommend probably a little bit longer than that. And then multiple periodic burns for both seedbed scarification and competition control could build up shortleaf pine regeneration over a number of years on poorer, drier sites. When you get on wetter sites with more competitive tree species, it might not always work. And then clipping or mowing, sprouting survival decreases with age. So that's an important point we gathered from the study. So I believe that's all I have. Here's my literature cited. But I'll take any questions if anybody has them. Yeah, Clarence.
You mentioned